Using a paycheck to cover credit card debt, even if interest gets capped at 10%, is about to feel easier on paper and harder in real life. Today, I'll show you the paycheck illusion. After the new 2026 tax updates, the math behind it, and the credit card trap. You will leave with one simple test to determine whether your paycheck can cover your debt without borrowing again next month. Start with what you actually feel on payday. Federal withholding, because that is what changes your deposit first. In 2026, tax brackets and related amounts were inflation adjusted, and payroll withholding tables were updated around those changes. That update can make your take-home pay look slightly bigger, even if your hourly rate or salary did not move. This is where you think, maybe I've been too cynical, because the paycheck looks friendlier on the surface. Then comes the second headline that sells hope fast, a political push to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. If you read only headlines, the story sounds perfect because it promises lower interest rates and easier debt repayment. This is the paper math moment, where you start believing your paycheck can finally cover everything without sacrifice. So the headline math looks simple. Slightly bigger take-home from withholding optics plus lower card interest if a cap passes. So you tell yourself, I can handle this, and walk into Home Depot to finance a refrigerator you've been putting off. You swipe the card, you feel responsible, and you think you just solved your problem like an adult today. Wrong, because you just believed a headline and treated a timing change as income, and that is how debt wins. If your wages didn't go up, your life didn't get cheaper, and your bigger check is not a raise. The market still prices credit like a punishment, with card APRs still high and promos ending fast. America is already carrying about $1.23 trillion in card balances, so millions are making this exact mistake right now. This is the moment your credit card stops being a tool and becomes your second paycheck, whether you admit it or not. Here's the reset. Your check is not bigger until you prove it after bills clear, not before. Withholding can change your deposit without changing your real budget, and that gap is where people drown. If you spend the extra before you validate it, you are spending future money and calling it progress. That is how people go from I can pay it to I can't breathe in 1 quarter, quietly. So here's the real question. What happens to prices when millions spend a raise that was never real? I'm not here to predict inflation for you because the future will do that job brutally in your grocery bill. Now we break the dream with inflation because inflation is the silent tax that eats paycheck optics everywhere fast. CPI rose 2.7% over the 12 months, ending December 2025, and essentials feel it before luxuries. Inflation lifts groceries, utilities, insurance, and repairs. So any small paycheck bump can vanish before you notice. When essentials rise, people swipe for basics, and revolving balances become a lifestyle bridge, not a short-term tool. That is why your paycheck can look better on paper, while your financial position quietly worsens in real life. So, fact 1 is simple. For the 94%, the paycheck is not guaranteed to be bigger. It is only untested. A real raise is higher income or a real net cost drop, not withholding optics or rounding noise. If your wages stayed flat, the only thing that changed is timing, and timing does not pay interest. If you treat timing like income, your credit card becomes the cushion, and the cushion becomes a chain. Fact 2 hits the 10% story. Even if a cap passes, lenders will not eat the loss quietly. Banks can tighten approvals, reduce limits, shrink rewards, and add fees to protect profits if the market shifts. So the fantasy is cheaper credit, and the reality can be less credit, right when you were counting on it. That is why you cannot build your survival plan on a headline, because headlines do not pay statements. A bill is not a final rule, and an introductory APR is not your existing card contract or pricing. So the trap is planning around cheaper borrowing, while the market may offer less access and stricter terms. Only after that reality check should you understand the Social Security cap detail, because it cuts the other direction. For earnings in 2026, the Social Security taxable maximum is $184,500, and the employee OASDI rate is 6.2%. The Social Security Administration says roughly 6% of covered workers earn above the taxable maximum in a typical year. For that slice, the cap increase can mean smaller checks for longer early in the year, until they finally hit it. The wage base was $176,100 in 2025. So in 2026, they added $8,400 of wages taxed at 6.2%. That is about $520 a year, roughly $43 a month until they reach the cap and the withholding stops. Here is the uncomfortable math that connects everyone because debt math does not care about your tax headlines. Even at 10% APR, an $8,000 balance costs roughly $800 in interest per year before fees. If you pay minimums, the rate matters less than time because compounding punishes you for staying indebted. So my opinion is direct. A 10% headline will not save you if your cash flow is unstable. Your safety comes from behavior and structure. Budget on confirmed income, cut principal fast, and build buffers. Practical case 1. You earned $55,000, you think your check is up, and you start spending the difference. You see $20 or $30 more per paycheck, upgrade subscriptions, and stop paying extra principal because you trust it. Then insurance renews, groceries climb, or rent adjusts, and the illusion disappears, but the new spending stays. Then your card becomes a second paycheck, and you revolve balances because your plan was built on vibes. Practical case 2. You financed that refrigerator because the paper math said you could handle the payment. Then you get a car repair, groceries jump, and your extra paycheck disappears into essentials without warning. Then you float minimums, and the refrigerator becomes a multi-year purchase you never intended to finance. This is how one responsible purchase becomes a chain of payments that quietly steals your next year. Practical case 3. You earn $210,000, carry balances, and your paycheck feels smaller in early 2026. You pay Social Security tax on more wages because the cap is higher, so net checks stay lower longer. If you cover that gap with credit, you are borrowing to replace payroll tax, and interest outlives the tax. Later, withholding stops after you hit the cap, and the bigger check tempts you to spend again. Here is the 1-minute paycheck test, and it is brutal because it removes feelings and leaves only numbers. Take your net paycheck and multiply it by how many paychecks you receive in an average month. Subtract rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, insurance, gas, minimum debt payments, and the bill you always forget. The number left is what your paycheck can safely use for extra debt payments without having to swipe again for basics. If that number is near zero, your credit card is not a tool. It is a warning light flashing in your face. Here is the action plan, because you cannot control Washington headlines, but you can control your next paycheck. Step 1. List essential monthly costs first, then compute what remains for debt payments without swiping again. If you cannot pay the statement balance, stop adding new purchases, because every swipe turns into months of interest. If you must swipe for a real emergency, define the payoff date in writing, or it will never happen. Step 2. Audit each card and write APR, fees, due dates, limits, and rewards in one place. If an issuer cuts your limit, your utilization jumps, your score drops, and refinancing becomes harder when you need it. If your score drops, your next loan costs more, so card debt can poison everything, not just the card. Step 3, choose payoff order, usually highest APR first while paying minimums everywhere to protect credit history. Step 4, automate payments so interest cannot snowball and set reminders so you never miss any due date. If statement balance autopay is not possible, automate a fixed extra amount and pause discretionary swipes until the balance declines. Step 5, build a starter emergency fund, even $500, so a surprise bill does not force another swipe. Use one rule for 2026. Treat any extra net pay as debt payoff, not lifestyle expansion, for at least 6 months. That rule converts the illusion into progress, and it protects you whether interest caps happen or never happen. If a cap becomes real, use the savings to kill principal faster, not to add new monthly obligations. If a cap fails, you still win, because your payoff plan was built on reality from day one. If you carry multiple cards, consider freezing the worst one so you cannot swipe it in a stressful situation. If you must use credit, use it with a plan. No new purchases unless you can pay monthly. Check utilization weekly because crossing 30% can drop scores, and lower scores raise borrowing costs. Call your issuer early if you are struggling because hardship programs exist, but action must come before missed payments. Be careful with balance transfers because a 0% offer can hide fees, and deadlines can trigger penalty APR. If you rely on overtime, treat it as debt payoff money first because it can disappear next quarter. Move due dates to align with paydays because timing errors can lead to late fees even when you have money. Use a one-page tracker for every paycheck because tracking beats motivation, and motivation collapses when stress rises. Set a payoff milestone, like the first $1,000, because early wins create momentum and reduce anxiety. When you hit the milestone, redirect that payment to the next card because snowballing payments accelerates progress. When progress shows up, do not celebrate by spending. Celebrate by buying back freedom from compounding interest. Final truth. Most people do not get a guaranteed bigger paycheck, and many will still sink into using credit as income. Inflation is still running, and lenders still protect profits, so the headline story is not your rescue plan. So yes, you can still drown in credit cards even if a 10% cap arrives because behavior beats headlines. Subscribe to Tax and Borders and watch the next video where I break down bank reactions and payoff sequencing. This content is educational, not tax or legal advice, so consult a qualified professional for your specific situation.